In film and other entertainment media, there has been an increase of courting and/or pandering to the black and pink demographics, in many cases resulting in simple tokenism. Is this the end of industries or a necessary step that they must take to remain lucrative, having plateaued or been abandoned by the customer base that they built their respective industries on? Some time back, I made a video mocking some complaints people have about the complaints surrounding films such as Black Panther. People make superficial points about casting, and I played on the calls for needing a racially diverse cast and took it to the extreme of saying instead of simply having dark skinned actors, why don't they go further and make sure they cast people who currently live in Africa? Well, the trailer for Black Panther is out. I found it to be a well done and engaging trailer, and as mentioned in the previous video, that's all that I care for. If you're going to make any changes, if you're going to make a product, if you focus on making it interesting, you'll have my support. I thought of possibly creating another video questioning the use of a hip-hop soundtrack instead of African music, even possibly African rap or house, as it is a thriving genre within Africa. But there are reasons behind this. Who is the target audience of this film? What fits? They're imaginary characters in an imaginary country, in an imaginary version of Africa, in an entirely fabricated universe. So thinking, okay, it has to have African musicians from this current universe doesn't really make much sense if having this hip-hop soundtrack is going to attract more people to the film. The filmmakers have certainly gone to other lengths to make it feel legit. I like the outfits that I saw in the trailer, and they have the look and feel of the thriving and growing contemporary fashion industries that I've seen here in Kenya and other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. There's also the attempt to have the African accent, which, as somebody pointed out, they have certain gravitas, seems to give certain gravitas to things that sound far more grave than they actually should. The person that said this added that the main actor that's playing Black Panther, who is Chadwick Boseman, being British, has a far more favorable African accent than the American actors in the film. And I have some thoughts on why this may be. First, as an American, the critic in question may be more familiar with black accents, so they can pick up on the parts that are not that quote-unquote African. Whereas with the British, even if he heard the English accent, the British accent, it's already something unfamiliar with him, so he might not be able to pick up on how many of those parts are not really African. Second, African English speakers most likely learned British English rather than the Americanized versions. And I think part of why British accents may sound smarter is due to the fact that they fit the language that they're speaking. For example, if you're speaking in Italian and you speak with an Italian accent, you seem more capable at that language because accents and languages develop in tandem. So in comparison to an American or Aussie accent, or any other accent speaking English, the English or British accent will fit the language the best. So back to the point of considerations being made in order to cater to certain target demographics. Things need to be profitable to be done. There are several groups advocating for changes to be made in genres and mediums that they do not care for. So creators and companies are then put in the position to see how they can best monetize on what demand truly exists. There are several new platforms to reach people and sell your products, and I have some ideas of how these online platforms and other forms of entertainment or finding entertainment may work in the near future if they aren't already being used in this way. For example, I think it already happened with the most recent Alien film. If I recall correctly, there was a scene used in the trailer that did not appear in the actual film. This can become a common thing. They may find it cost-effective to shoot actual scenes or B-roll between the main scenes that are going to be in the film to get things that would usually be in extras or come across with the Blu-ray or DVD releases of the film and show them on online video platforms. It doesn't take much for each film or studio to have its independent YouTube channel. They already create independent websites for pretty much each decently sized film. It's nothing to actually just add a YouTube channel to that. So how about if you get some actors to come in? There may be people breaking into the industry or bigger names that may have some interest in the project. And let's actually use an actual example. Let's use a Black Panther, for example. Maybe some big-name African actors or YouTubers could help even get maybe $500,000 more in revenue by being attached to the project. But they don't necessarily have a part in the main story. So instead of flying your big name actors to do tours of several African cities and do PR, public relations, do advertising for it, you can fly some of your crew over to Africa and shoot some scenes with the people there. For example, you can have some scenes where some famous African actors or TV personalities are watching some clip from an extended action sequence that you already shot for the film, but this is a part that was cut out and didn't make the final film. Then you have them react to it to maybe concern for the King Chala. You put this on the YouTube channel, and it's profit for all involved. You'd be supporting the growth of the global film industry, which it is global now. I know they have like Hollywood, they have Bollywood, they have Nigerwood, which is the Nigerian one. Then they have the different like Hong Kong cinema. But these things have a lot of crossover. People watch things with subtitles. It's a global industry. This could also address the points and concerns from people claiming that you aren't keeping it real enough, not casting enough actual African actors like I did in that mocking video. It makes great use of the new platforms and technology, and there's a lot of really good new ideas coming along. I think it's an exciting time to be involved in all of this. It's an exciting time to be alive in general. So this isn't even accounting for the current hardships to the utterly disgusting and unsavory things coming out of what the established industry has been functioning as. And the established industry, I'm talking about Hollywood. There's all these allegations coming out about different producers and people, how people have been keeping certain assaults sexually, certain treatments of people within it. This is one thing that in particular really irks me, that certain studios will buy up ideas, will buy up stories and just squash it because they have a similar project coming up that they want to get that project ahead of it. Or they'll just keep things away from other people so other people can't use them. So there's some things I think that are really going to change with the way Hollywood and media is created. So winding this down, well, kind of sort of not really winding it down, but getting towards the end, there may be some considerations of maintaining a certain level of brand quality in this sort of expansive productions, especially if one would let go of the stringent intellectual property protections, as I mentioned before, with people saying, okay, if I own this book, nobody else can do anything similar or using any characters from it, even if that book itself is based off of some general storyline out there. If somebody has the rights to it, the company owns the rights to it, no one can really create anything to it. It kind of limits people in a certain way. So I've also been thinking of crossover ideas between genres for at least a decade, and I think you're seeing it happening more and more often. Like this illustration that's playing on the screen during this video is of the Pink Panther animated character dressed up as Marvel Comics character the Black Panther. The Pink Panther was originally a live-action television show featuring a detective, which then led to a cartoon character having its own series and persona. I imagine more of this will be coming up, with people being able to, if not outright encouraged, to build off of established properties. It's also a play on how these are imaginary characters, so it shouldn't matter about the color of the person in it that much than it would the characterization. I think we began to see this movement in earnest with crossover video games such as Kingdom Hearts, which was Disney meets Squaresoft. So this is the Walt Disney Company. Characters like Mickey Mouse, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, they're in this video game with characters like Sephiroth, Cloud, and other Squaresoft and role-playing games, Final Fantasy universe type things like summoning of creatures, the fighting systems, EXP, and that kind of thing. Then you have the Marvel vs. Capcom games and the Mortal Kombat and DC Comics, and then you have things like Super Smash Bros., which is just a bunch of different characters from different games and universes in this fighting game. So I imagine the Western creative industry will follow in the steps of the Japanese one. Manga and anime are massive industries enjoyed by toddlers to old retirees. You have storylines which is just slice of life type things, like you'll have this one manga where it's Jesus, the Buddha, and somebody else, I think, as just 20-something-year-olds living in an apartment and how their life goes by. Then you have other stories like this one story called Eden, if I'm getting that name right, which was going really deep into Gnosticism and philosophy and all these other topics. So any genre you can think of, you can find in this massive industry. So there are some large writers such as Oda Sensei with the One Piece, who is extremely wealthy from it. I think One Piece is on number 780 something now. And they normally have, I think it's weekly releases, and they get maybe 4 or 5 weeks off a year or something, so it's massively popular. But most creators seem to live more of a middle class month to month existence, just like they're doing a regular job, similar to that of many of their readers. So there's a lot more of interaction and relation with the creators and the fans. I'm starting to see some of this with the reviews and things that I'm seeing with what the Marvel industry has become, the so-called social justice warrior infestation and mangaization of comic books. And it's kind of a situation where these people are more pandering to certain smaller groups instead of just creating something that's generally liked by, I think, the older type of demographics that were there. And that's more understandable with my familiarity with manga, where I know there's certain mangas that have very strong followings, but they know this is only going to be targeted to, they have the different target groups where they say this is literally mostly targeted to girls that are between 12 and 16. And they have their own art styles, they have their own story arcs, their own tropes and things like that. And those people take those books in. They're done in a more cheaper version, and they're done in a more accessible version, more interaction between the creators and the people taking in. And you see that happening more in Western comics. So I think having massive companies that most of the talent is focused at may be a thing of the past. This whole idea of having, yes, DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Image Comics, and maybe a few others, that thing I don't think will exist anymore. It's almost like a reverse of that ma and pa shops being put out of business by the large retailers, where it's small independent creators maybe putting the large publication houses out to pasture. In Japan, they also seem to have a lot more leeway for doujinshi, which are amateur-produced manga, anime, or games on source material. There may be many cases of bit characters, also side characters, receiving their own spin-offs and being very successful. And you kind of see that story. I think it happened with, who was it? The Minions were a bit character in Despicable Me or something, and then they got picked up and they had their own thing. And also possibly for a different genre here, we've seen it happen with things like 50 Shades of Grey, which was a salacious BDSM fantasy porn book, which then became a film that had many females doing the reverse of clutching their proverbial pearls, which began as a fan-made spin-off from the teen vampire Twilight series. So now, getting to the end of the video. I have seen many people begin to find better and responsive ways to fund and create content. I think the larger companies will continue to try to adjust to this new media landscape. Some content creators on established platforms have become behemoths that are not as nimble and able to adjust. Some of them have a gravitational pull that any smaller or newer interesting people that may be saying something similar cannot pull enough viewers away from these large satellites of people to sustain their efforts. This is part of what drives innovation. This is part of the equally unfair reality that is life. And I'm going to embrace this, and I look forward to what's happening with it. It's been promising so far. So, was there a point to this video? I'm not quite sure. But how about you let me know what you think about the Black Panther trailer? Definitely go out and check out the trailer if you haven't seen it yet, and then come back and let me know. What do you think about old media houses or old forms of media, established forms of media, trying to adjust to new outlets? We see it not happening that successfully when it comes to the news, but just it's happening across the board. And how do you think of also the established outlets, so these newer outlets, things like YouTube and things like this that were trailblazers? What do you think about them catering to the money available in old media? Because these old dinosaurs, they might not be attracting as many eyes to them as they were before, but they still have the connections, they still have the money, and they still have that bankability. And what do you think of this new format that I'm doing with these videos of having an illustration kind of playing through in the background as I discuss? And I also have a secondary channel where I'll be posting some full-length process videos such as these, and other art and occupationally related materials, and I also use it as a morgue file of sorts, and that one won't have any commentary or any ramblings that are not directly related to the video. Like if I'm filming some certain flower, I'll be like, okay, this is a flower I found here, and that's it. I won't be talking about how smelling the roses is something that you don't necessarily need to do anymore, or etc. That's it for now, and there'll be links below to the store where you can get this design of the Black Panther, or the pink Black Panther, pink black, I don't know what I'm going to call this design, but it's going to be there in the store. You can get this and many others like or unlike it that will make you look better than the people who don't have them. So like, share, and subscribe, and till next video, goodbye.